if you're one of the, an estimated 12 million Americans who hold dual or multiple citizenships, today's deep dive is going to hit very close to home.
Very close.
We're talking about a bill introduced in Congress that is so sweeping, it basically tries to force dual citizens to pick a side, choose one nationality within a year.
Or face losing your U.S. citizenship automatically.
It's a huge deal. And this is going to be a really interesting deep dive. We're featuring 2 videos by Adrian Pandev of Pandev Law.
Right. He's a New York-based lawyer specializing in immigration law. Really knows his stuff.
Yeah, his YouTube channel is just under the handle @AndrewPandev. He posted part 1 and a part 2 on this highly controversial dual citizenship bill.
And if this legislation were taken seriously, I mean, it would represent a seismic shift in how the U.S. thinks about its citizens and their ties to the rest of the world.
The concern is just massive. You can feel it.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
So our mission today is to really dissect this proposed Exclusive Citizenship Act of 2025. We need to look at the practical hurdles, which are enormous.
And more importantly, the constitutional problems.
That's the core of it. The constitutional protections. It just tries to steamroll.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're talking about the Exclusive Citizenship Act of 2025, and it was introduced by a Senator Moreno from Ohio. So what is the core mechanism here? What's the choice?
It creates this non-negotiable one-year deadline for pretty much every U.S. citizen who also holds a foreign citizenship.
1 year.
1 year. And they have to take one of 2 very specific steps within those 12 months. Or, face the music.
It really is an ultimatum. So what are the 2 options on the table for these millions of people?
Okay, so option 1 is, on the surface, straightforward. Renounce your foreign citizenship.
And how do they propose you do that?
The bill says you do this by writing a letter to the U.S. Secretary of State, so the Department of State.
A letter, okay. And option 2?
Option 2 is the flip side. Renounce your U.S. citizenship.
And the bill actually changes where that happens, doesn't it?
It does, which is a huge detail. Right now, you renounce U.S. citizenship at an embassy or consulate abroad handled by the State Department. This bill would shift that entire process to the Department of Homeland Security, DHS.
So, okay, we have the 2 choices. But the real teeth in this bill, the real threat, is what happens if you just do nothing. If you miss that 1-year deadline.
And that's the key. If an individual fails to do either one, they don't renounce their foreign citizenship, they don't renounce their U.S. citizenship, the bill says they will be deemed to have automatically relinquished their U.S. citizenship.
Automatically, no judge, no hearing.
Nothing. It's just gone. Yeah. It's treated as an automatic loss, no further process required.
That is just a staggering penalty for inaction. And it's not just for people who are dual citizens right now, is it?
Correct. It's designed to be forward-looking. For any U.S. citizen who gets a foreign citizenship after this theoretical law passes, that very act is treated as a voluntary relinquishment of their U.S. citizenship.
So it's basically trying to end dual citizenship for Americans, period.
That's the clear intent.
All right, let's shift gears from the concept to the monumental mess this would create in the real world. I mean, the sources you mentioned, Pandev's videos, they make it clear that even if you ignore the constitutional questions for a second.
Yeah, just for a second.
The mechanics of this thing are just frankly absurd. What's the first big failure in that first option?
The fatal flaw in option 1, renouncing your foreign citizenship, is that the bill seems to be written in a complete vacuum. It ignores how the rest of the world actually works.
How so?
In a lot of countries, it's either incredibly difficult or just flat out impossible for a citizen to renounce their nationality.
Can you give us an example of that, one that really highlights the problem?
Yeah, the source brings up Argentina as a perfect case. For many people, Argentinian citizenship is for life. It's irrevocable.
So if you're a U.S. citizen who also happens to have Argentinian citizenship,
then option 1 is literally not an option for you. You're barred by another country's law from complying with this U.S. requirement. So you're immediately forced to either give up your U.S. citizenship or lose it automatically.
It's a forced choice where one door is already welded shut.
Exactly. But it gets worse. Even for countries where you can renounce, the mechanism the bill proposes is legally meaningless.
You mean the letter to the Secretary of State?
Yes. The U.S. Secretary of State has absolutely zero authority to end someone's citizenship in France or Mexico or Japan. That's up to the French, Mexican, or Japanese governments. That letter is just a piece of paper with no legal power internationally.
So that whole mechanism is just broken from the start.
Fundamentally broken.
Okay, so then we get to option 2, renouncing your U.S. citizenship. If option 1 is a dead end for almost everyone, this bill would trigger a tidal wave of people being forced into option 2, and that seems like its own kind of administrative collapse.
It would be pure chaos. As you said, the State Department handles this now at embassies, shifting millions of potential renunciations to the Department of Homeland Security, a department that has no system, no staff, no infrastructure for this.
They would have to build it all from scratch. Overnight?
Yes, entirely new systems, new procedures, trained staff, all while DHS is trying to manage, everything else it does. It's a practical impossibility.
So we've moved from administrative chaos to financial chaos, because if millions of Americans are just deemed to have given up their citizenship by doing nothing, we're not just talking about immigration agencies anymore, we're talking about the IRS.
And this is where it gets really punitive, the dreaded exit tax.
Right.
When you lose your citizenship, even through this automatic deeming process, the IRS sees that as an expatriation event for tax purposes.
And what does that trigger? What is the exit tax?
It's brutal. If you meet certain net worth or income thresholds, the tax code treats it as if you sold all of your worldwide assets on the day you cease to be a citizen.
So you get hit with a massive capital gains tax bill.
And theoretical profits.
Yeah.
On assets you never even sold.
So people who maybe didn't even know about the law or couldn't comply with an impossible choice could suddenly get a tax bill for millions of dollars.
Precisely. Because the bill just slaps this label of voluntary on the inaction, it triggers this tax for potentially millions of unsuspecting people. The IRS would be paralyzed.
And, the sources pointed out a really interesting political irony here that shows just how wide a net this bill casts.
Oh, yeah. That was fascinating. If this bill were to pass, members of the president's own family.
The First Lady and the President's son.
Right. They're dual U.S. and Slovenian citizens. They would immediately have to comply. They'd be forced to go through this process of renouncing their Slovenian citizenship. It really shows that this touches everyone, right up to the top.
Okay, so if the practical and administrative disasters aren't enough to sink this bill, we have to get to the constitutional showdown. This is where it goes from being a bad idea to a potential violation of fundamental rights.
This is the real killer, the definitive legal obstacle. Congress just doesn't have the power to strip a citizen of their citizenship.
And there's a huge precedent for that, right? A landmark Supreme Court case.
The key case is from 1967, Afrayim versus Rusk. The court was incredibly clear. Congress cannot take U.S. citizenship away. It can only be lost if it is voluntarily relinquished.
So how does this bill try to get around that? What's the legal loophole they're aiming for?
They're trying to redefine the word voluntary. The bill sets up this ultimatum and then argues that if you fail to act, your inaction is a choice.
That because you had the option to keep your U.S. citizenship by giving up the foreign one, your failure to do so means you voluntarily chose to lose it.
Exactly. They're trying to legislate what a voluntary act looks like.
And do we think the courts would buy that silence equals voluntary intent?
It's extremely unlikely. When courts look at voluntary relinquishment under the Afrayim standard, they look for actual intent, free will.
You have to mean to do it.
You have to mean to do it. Arguing that failing to comply with an impossible demand like renouncing your Argentinian citizenship is a voluntary act of giving up your most fundamental right? I mean, that's a legal argument that is stretched incredibly thin. It would almost certainly be challenged as a violation of the 14th Amendment.
So the bill seems unconstitutional on its face, but the source material you pointed us to adds this really crucial and kind of disturbing layer of nuance. It says that not all U.S. citizens actually have the same level of constitutional protection here.
And this is probably the most complex, but also the most important part of this whole conversation. Case law has, over time, kind of created two different classes of U.S. citizens.
Two classes?
Yeah, based on where their citizenship comes from, legally speaking. And that affects how much protection they have from Congress trying to impose conditions like this.
Okay, so let's break that down. Who is in Class 1, the group with the strongest protection?
Class 1 is fully protected by the 14th Amendment and that Afrayim v. Rusk ruling. This group includes anyone born inside the United States.
Birthright citizenship.
Right. And also anyone who naturalized to become a U.S. citizen. They moved here, went through the process, became citizens.
Because the 14th Amendment explicitly says All persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens. It's right there in the Constitution.
Exactly. Their right is constitutional. It's foundational. Congress can't just pass a law to take it away. Only a person's own voluntary act can end it.
So then, who is in this more vulnerable Class 2?
Class 2 citizens are those who were born outside the United States, but to one or two American parents.
Okay.
They're citizens by birth, absolutely, but they aren't directly covered by that specific born or naturalized in the U.S. clause of the 14th Amendment.
So if their right isn't from the Constitution directly, where does it come from?
It's granted by a law, specifically the Immigration and Nationality Act. It's an act of Congress, so their citizenship is statutory, not constitutional.
And there was another Supreme Court case that basically confirmed this distinction gives Congress more power over them.
Yes, a 1971 case, Rogers versus Belay. The court held that since Congress granted this type of citizenship through a statute, Congress can also impose conditions on it.
So what does that mean for how vulnerable this second group is to a bill like the Exclusive Citizenship Act?
It means they have more to worry about, legally speaking.
Yeah.
Because their citizenship is statutory, Congress theoretically has more room to impose conditions on it. Conditions that would probably be unconstitutional if you tried to apply them to someone born in Ohio.
So even though any law would be challenged?
It would absolutely be challenged. But this distinction makes them the primary target for this kind of legislation.
Okay, so we've established this bill is, well, a legal and logistical train wreck. It's likely unconstitutional. So what's the big takeaway? Why spend all this time on a bill that is, as you said, almost certainly dead in the water?
Right. The short-term prediction is clear. This thing isn't going anywhere. But the long-term concern is the fact that it exists at all. The philosophy behind it.
It shows a really profound misunderstanding in Congress about how global citizenship even works in the modern world.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
The bill seems clueless that many people become dual citizens passively. Your parents were from another country, or you were just born while they were working abroad. It wasn't an active choice.
And this kind of thinking, this kind of restriction, it goes beyond just being a legal headache. It starts to limit how American citizens can live their lives, work internationally.
It sets a really dangerous precedent. This bill is a kind of scary pathway toward restricting the rights of certain U.S. citizens, specifically that second class we talked about. It's a philosophy that sees global ties as a liability, not an asset.
This has been a really insightful and, frankly, pretty alarming deep dive. To recap the three main failures here, you've got the impossible one-year ultimatum.
The promised administrative collapse, from DHS to the IRS and its exit tax.
And most importantly, the fact that it almost certainly fails the constitutional test for voluntary relinquishment that was set in Afrayim v. Rusk.
And tying it all up, the whole discussion just highlights this really uncomfortable legal reality that not all U.S. citizens are on the same constitutional footing. Those born abroad to American parents have a statutory citizenship, which makes them a potential target for Congress.
Which brings us to our final thought for you to take away. If Congress does have this power to impose conditions on citizens whose status comes from a statute or so-called Class 2 citizens, that raises a pretty big question. What other conditions, far beyond just holding a second passport, could Congress try to impose on this group in the future? Thank you for diving deep with us.